Hello, everyone, and welcome back. It's been a little bit here since we've done a recruiting podcast, but that's just a bunch of different busy schedules and everything that all happened. But I am Nathaniel Rutherford of RockyTopInsider.com, joined today by Brandon Martin, no Matt Ray, but Brandon Martin of All Recruiting Reports, and we're here for the RTI and VR2 Recruiting Podcast. We appreciate y'all being patient with us, as it's been probably about 2 weeks since we've done an episode. We're going to try to get back into the swing of things and getting you at least one per week. We will hopefully not make you wait as long as we have for an episode here. Again, but Brandon, we're going to do one this week anyway, and then everything happened within like a 13, 14-hour span of Tuesday night and Wednesday. So we've got a lot to talk about here, just you and I. I don't even know where to begin. We can talk about football. We can talk about basketball. And basketball, Tennessee gets 5-star Jaden Springer to commit. The Vols are in the midst of putting together arguably the best recruiting class in the modern recruiting era in Tennessee basketball from the men's side. I'm going to have an article about that on RockyTopInsider.com, actually. Probably on Thursday morning will be when that comes out. You go check it out. Like I said, RockyTopInsider.com. We'll talk about that. But Jaden Springer commits. Vols have him, Keon Johnson, and Corey Walker, all top 40 prospects. Keon and Jaden are both 5 stars. But Brandon, this is primarily a football recruiting podcast, and I think most of the listeners here, that while I think a lot of them do care about basketball. I think since we're in the middle of football season right now, basketball is about to begin, but I think since we're in the middle of football season, and I think most listeners, like I said, are probably football fans, football recruiting fans. Let's talk about some football recruiting news. And I know for a fact when everything was going down late last night, I was texting with Matt about when things happened with the Whitehaven trio. You, Brandon, were asleep. You'd fallen asleep, and we both were lamenting the fact that you were asleep, because we knew you especially were going to be very excited and very amped up about the fact that Tennessee had landed the Whitehaven trio. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of turn things over to you for a little bit. I'll kind of pepper you with some questions here, because I know you've gotten to see them in person. But what was your reaction when you saw that all three of Bryson Eason, Martavius French, and Tamarion McDonald pulled the trigger, and kind of what's your initial thoughts on those three kids? And I'll kind of ask you some follow-up questions on all of them too.
I wasn't really surprised that the three of them committed at the same time. I kind of felt like after I got to see them the week after their official visit to Tennessee, I drove out to watch them play when they played White Station. We got out there. At the time, French was still committed to Arkansas. He was in Tennessee gloves. He was in Tennessee cleats. Eason had a Tennessee towel that he was playing in. It was obvious that Tennessee really made a big impression on those three guys, between Jeremy Pruitt showing up and offering Tamarion McDonald a scholarship and offering him a place. The next week they were all on campus for an official visit, them showing up with the gear, the interview I got with them that night. I left that thinking Tennessee was going to get all three of them. And I told Matt earlier in the week, I said, when one goes, they're all going to go. Now, I didn't think it would be all three of them in an hour. I also am still kicking myself that I was sound asleep. We had been going to record something else, and it had gotten postponed, and I sat down and I was going to watch TV just for a minute while I had my supper in the microwave, and I was letting it get done. And I've been running so much all over the state, all over 2 or 3 states the last few weeks. I fell asleep sitting straight up on my couch, and I wake up to about 200 messages in our group thread at 11 o'clock at night going, what just happened? And it was equal parts. I'm thrilled because I love all three of these guys. They're all outstanding players. They're great locker room guys. They're going to be great for the culture at Tennessee. And just incredibly disappointed because these are three guys I've been really high on from early on, especially once I got to see them. All guys I've been so high on. I was so disappointed that I missed it initially. So I got my analysis piece on the three of them written up. And it's the interesting thing with these guys is, and I talked about this in the piece that I wrote for VR2, it's really hard to talk about these guys individually. As good as they are, they're so close. Mm-hmm. They have been playing football together since they were 6 years old. Mm-hmm. And they've played together all the way up. They really, truly are best friends. And they all take ownership and leadership of that Whitehaven defense, which is, by the way, if you've not gotten a chance to see them, one of the best defenses in high school football in the nation.
Yep.
They are incredible to watch.
Yeah, they're only giving up. I looked up their schedule this morning. They're only allowing on the season through 7 games 4.3 points per game. They've shut out 4 of their 7 opponents they've played. The only game they lost was to Brentwood Academy, and that one was a 17-14 kind of defensive struggle. The other two games,
they should have won that game.
Yeah, the other 2 games they gave up 7 and 6 points. So I mean, they and like I said, Tennessee's getting 3 guys from that defense, and those 3 guys, especially Bryson Easton and Martavius French, they're pivotal cogs into the just the defensive juggernaut that Whitehaven is this season. And to me, I'm curious on what you think on some of these guys, because like I said, you've been there and seen them in person. I've spoken with Tamarion, and I think from just talking with him before, and I'm hoping to be able to talk with him again after you and I finished recording this podcast, but he's likely going to be in the secondary in some sort, whether it's going to be nickel or a star or a safety. He's going to be some kind of secondary option for Tennessee. I don't think he'll play outside linebacker for Tennessee, just from what he's told me and just from watching his film and stuff too. But in the linebacker perspective, Brandon, Tennessee, I would argue, maybe besides defensive line, I think inside linebacker is Tennessee's biggest area of need in this class, and you could probably argue inside linebacker is bigger than defensive line, just because of all the attrition and stuff that the inside linebacker units faced this season. You've already lost, as many guys as you lost. Three guys from the inside linebacker group this season that you thought were going to be contributors, and then you're going to lose Dana Batuli to graduation. That leaves this coaching staff for next year with Henry To'oTo'o as the only guy they really trust to play. I mean, unless J.J. Peterson can, make some more rapid development between now and next season. I mean, they don't really, Salone Page isn't really a great option there, and I think Corvus Crouch will play there. I just wonder, would they prefer to have him on the outside? Do they want to keep him inside? But they really only have To'oTo'o as a true inside linebacker option moving forward after the season. Getting these 2 guys, I think it can't be stated enough how important that is for Tennessee's 2020 recruiting haul. What do you make of both Easton and French as inside linebackers? Because one, to me, I look at Easton as he's this big tank of a guy who actually moves pretty well for his size, but he is, to me, kind of the ideal run-stopping inside linebacker just from watching his film, and I'm curious what you've seen from him in person. French, to me, has really long arms. He's a little bit more of the athletic of the 2, and he's the guy who can I think is actually pretty good in pass coverage for an inside linebacker, and we've seen this season inside linebackers in Tennessee's 3-4 scheme get asked to do quite a bit in pass coverage. So what are your thoughts on those 2 as inside linebackers?
I'll start with Easton. To give you the really, really short version of the breakdown of Easton, when I was watching them against White Station, I had a reporter from Memphis come up and from one of the Memphis papers come up and ask me, he said, you see these guys, you've looked at them. He said, if you had to give me one sentence about Bryson Easton, what would you say? And I said, it's real simple. Don't get got. This is not a guy you want to get a hold of you. He is 6'2" and at least 250 pounds. I think he's probably playing closer to 260, and he's not got bad weight on him. Nope. This is a big, thick, strong linebacker. He is a 3-4 linebacker on the inside. He's a thumper. He is very, very comfortable engaging with an offensive lineman. He's got the strength to stonewall an offensive lineman if he needs to. He can scrape off a block. He can fight through a block to get to a ball carrier. The surprising thing for a lot of people is going to be when they see him is how fast he is.
Yeah.
He looks fast on film. He's faster in person. He is a sideline to sideline tackling machine. The body type and the play style, the best comparison I've probably got is AJ Johnson. He's built a lot like AJ. I think he's probably coming in. He's going to be more physically developed than AJ was. This is a really seriously big, strong linebacker, and he gets sideline to sideline. It is really difficult to turn a corner on him, and he's not necessarily a knockout kind of hitter. He's not a guy who goes for the big hit, but he's so big and so strong and so fast that when he arrives and delivers that big form tackle on you, because when he hits you, you go down, which is the ultimate compliment in my mind from a linebacker.
Yeah.
When he gets his hands on you, the play's over. He doesn't miss tackles. He's a very, very, very good form tackler. He plays low. He gets low. He hits you, wraps up, and drives through. And it's not necessarily those big knockout shots you're used to seeing a lot of linebackers make, but he jars people just because he's so big. He's so strong when he arrives that it's jarring. And you talked about him in pass coverage. I think he's better in pass coverage than people give him credit for. He's not called upon to do a lot of pass coverage, and that is probably because French and obviously McDonald are better at it than he is. But that doesn't mean that he's not able to. In the White Station game, he faked a blitz and stepped back into a cover one robber look, taking over the middle of the field. And I don't know if the quarterback didn't see him. I don't know if the quarterback thought he could get it over him. Quarterback throws the ball, though. Eason climbed the ladder, intercepts it, got a nice return, showed good athleticism to get up and get that. He's a very, very technically sound linebacker, both in the way that he takes his drops, the way that he tackles, the way that he moves in coverage. He reads a defense well, and he trusts his teammates. And this is something that I'm going to come back to with all three of these guys. But there were times in both games against Brentwood and against White Station who both have a significant amount of Division I talent on their rosters. Both have SEC commits on their rosters as seniors right now. I watched him come up and just take on a blocker and stonewall him. And he got taken out of the play, but you could see from the scheme of the play that was what he was supposed to do. He was supposed to occupy that blocker and allow his teammates to go make a play. And he trusts his teammates to make that play implicitly. He's going to do what he's asked to do in the framework of the defense, and he trusts the guys around him to make plays. Similarly, they're all completely content to occupy a blocker to free him up when he's the guy that needs to make a play. And he doesn't let them down when he gets asked to have that situation put on him. And so it's really interesting to watch. These three guys, all of them are very, very unselfish. They're all leaders. They all run Whitehaven through their warm-ups. I've never seen that before. The three of them lead Whitehaven out and split off, and each one gets a third of the team and stands at the front, and the coaches don't say anything during the warm-ups. These three guys run the warm-ups for the team. It's really interesting to watch, but they trust each other. They play for each other.
You're talking about him as a tackler, Bryson Eason, or kind of really all of them as tacklers, really. That was one thing that really stood out to me watching their all their film. Mostly, I guess Eason and French, but also with McDonald. You mentioned they aren't these guys. Kind of one of the big knocks about Nigel Warrior for Tennessee is that he tries to go for that big hit, that big, as you said, the kind of jarring hit that's going to be on the highlight reel. These guys kind of jar you, as you said, with just being really good form tacklers. I mean, all of them, but specifically with Eason and I think French too, they're really good wrap-up tacklers. I mean, they have really good form. If you're within reach of them, if you're a running back or receiver and you're within reach of Eason or French, you're probably going down. Like you said, that's kind of one of the biggest compliments you can give a linebacker. I think it's absolutely true for especially with Eason and French, is that if you're within arm's reach of them, you're going down, and they're really good to form tacklers. Also, Brandon, you mentioned about Eason maybe being more kind of developed than AJ Johnson coming out of high school or heading into college. Coming out of high school, I'm looking at AJ's recruiting profile on 247 Sports. He was 6'3", 233. So, I mean, you weren't too far off thinking just kind of the way they were built when they first started getting. I think when Johnson played at Tennessee, he was around, 6'3", 245 for most of his playing time at Tennessee. I'm curious in your thoughts about, because I think Eason's going to definitely stay inside and be maybe an inside linebacker. Maybe he bulks up and, maybe he plays with his hand in the dirt a little bit. That'll be, we were talking about before we hit record on here, just kind of about a lot of the positional versatility that Tennessee's going to be able to have in their 2020 class with a lot of different guys. I think it'll be interesting to see what happens with Eason. At the same time, though, French, I've heard other people talk about how he's listed at around 6'2", 240. People talk about how he maybe has slimmed down a little bit, not to where he's gotten, too skinny or anything like that, but there's talk about, he's slimmed down a little bit. Maybe, Brandon, what do you think about his potential in college? I think he'll stick at inside linebacker, but is he a guy that maybe they push to the outside? Because I look at him as he as we're saying here, I think they all have pretty good skills as pass coverage guys. I think as a linebacker, though, I definitely like French's pass coverage skill as a linebacker better than any of the other ones of Easton or McDonald. I just watch his play. French, to me, I think he's going to fit in very well in the SEC as far as just a very versatile linebacker who, Pruitt's mentioned before, he likes to have 4-for-4 guys who kind of can play all four positions in the linebacking room. I do genuinely believe that French is a guy who can be very close to fitting that mold, as far as he's not just going to play, maybe one spot or maybe even two spots. He could play three, maybe even all four spots on the field for Tennessee at linebacker.
I completely agree with you. I think that's one of his biggest strengths. I do think French has slimmed down a little bit, and where I think you could see Eason with his hand on the from time to time, he has an outstanding first step and is a good pass rusher. I think you could see him in a little bit of a Quavaris Crouch role at times next year, but they really would prefer to keep him inside, let him play middle linebacker, let him be that thumper. French is a guy they're going to be able to – he can play any linebacking role that Tennessee has. Outside linebacker in a pass rush situation, outside linebacker in pass coverage in the base defense. If you want to put him in a sub package, he's fast enough and good enough in coverage to do that. If you want to put him in the middle against a run-heavy team and let him play sideline to sideline and thump beside Toa and Eason, he's absolutely able to do that. I do think he's slimmed down a little. I think he's probably playing right now around 235 if I had to guess, but he's still pretty close to that 240 that he's listed. Where I talk about Eason being so outstanding sideline to sideline, playing through trash and getting places, to me, and this may not be a term many other people use, but to me, French is more of a vertical linebacker. And what I mean by that is he's going to attack the line. He's going to attack the ball carrier. He drops in coverage really, really well. So he's playing on a different plane than Eason is. He's a very, very good blitzer. He's an extremely instinctual linebacker. He's one of those guys that just always seems to be in the right place at the right time. He knows when to trust the play call. He knows when to do what's called. And he knows when the play call's beat and where he needs to go anyway. He's a film rat. He's a instinctive player. He's got a high football IQ and just has a nose for the ball. His last step when he closes in to tackle you, I don't know how he does it, but he seems to accelerate in that last step and just explode into guys. Again, good form tackler, wraps up. If he hits you, you're going down. He doesn't miss very many tackles. None of the three guys do. But he seems to always find that last extra little burst when it comes time to close out on a ball carrier and hit him. I think he's exactly what you're talking about, though. He's a 4-for-4 linebacker. They can play him anywhere, and I think that's going to help him get on the field. I think he's going to be a staple and be a starter for Tennessee because he can do everything that Jeremy Pruitt and Derek Ansley are going to ask of him, whether it's rush the passer as an outside linebacker, whether it's play on the inside when somebody needs a break, get in pass coverage, whatever they need, he's able to do it. He's also don't think that because he's a little smaller than Eason, he's very strong. He is very comfortable taking on blockers. He can play that inside thumper role if he needs to. He plays through blocks well, plays through contact, fights off blocks, read and react linebacker. He's faster than Eason, and he uses that speed to his advantage. It's very interesting to watch how Whitehaven uses him, because they'll turn him loose at times. They will let Eason be the guy that just gets sideline to sideline, and if it moves, hit it. And they'll just turn French loose every now and then to cause chaos. They'll blitz him off the other side, or they'll let him bail out and cover a guy that doesn't look like it would normally be his man. Just let him read the play and go out and kind of freelance a bit, and he's very, very good at it. And the other thing you're getting in French is the vocal leader of this Whitehaven team, and I think he's going to be that at Tennessee as well. Eason's the first man out through warm-ups, but French is the one that's talking. He's the one yelling, clapping, getting everybody else into it, and the guy stays involved in the game. He is just a wellspring of energy for that team. It's constantly bubbling up. It's constantly running over. If they weren't on the field, he was standing on the bench all night.
Wow.
not sitting on it. He's standing on it, yelling for the offense, yelling for his guys. At one point, Whitehaven got a defensive touchdown in that game, and the hardest hit that the defensive tackle took was when French got to him to hug him in the end zone. It's a team, again, that just, they trust each other, they play for each other. I keep coming back to that. I had a chance to interview all three of them, and independently and completely separate, nobody heard what the other one was saying. They all brought that up and used almost the same words. French was very quick to point out, he said, I don't play as low as Bryson. I'm not quite as technically sound as Bryson. Man, he's so big, he's so strong. Bryson's talking about how French just makes things happen and knows where to go and attacks the ball. And both of those guys were talking about Tamarion like, dude, he's just a crazy man. And it's so fun to watch these guys because they know each other so well. And I think the culture that you saw at Whitehaven of, I don't care if I don't make the play, I'm going to do my job because I trust the guys on this defense and the guys beside me to make the play, to do their job. I think that's one of the things Jeremy Pruitt really wants to build. Tennessee struggled all season with blown assignments, particularly in the secondary, and sometimes it comes from guys trying to do too much. And I think these three guys are going to bring hey, you got to trust your guys, and to trust your guys, you got to earn that trust. You got to know your assignment. You got to make the plays, but don't do too much. Do your job, and we'll take care of it. And I think that's what he's trying to build here. These guys are going to be big assets for that.
To kind of finish up the Whitehaven trio here before you kind of move on to a little bit other stuff, talk about Tamarion McDonald here. I mentioned earlier, I think he'll probably play in the secondary more than outside linebacker, but I mean, there's a chance he could. He could bulk up, and he's about 6'2", 210, 215 right now, or excuse me, 220, 225 right now. He would have to add probably another 15 pounds or so to be really effective in the SEC coming off the edge, as what Tennessee uses their outside linebackers for and the 3-4 system. Brandon, you mentioned there talking about Tamarion being just kind of a little crazy person. What do you make of him as a player? Because I watched him on film from last year. I haven't seen a whole lot of his stuff from this season, but just from last year, it did seem like maybe he was kind of the lost name there because Eason and French got all the attention. It seemed to me like he's a pretty good, obviously SEC prospect. He was obviously committed to Mississippi State. He had offers from LSU, Ole Miss, and Arkansas, as long with Tennessee. Once Pruitt got there and got to watch him and kind of reevaluated and realized, hey, my initial eval on this kid was wrong. What, in your opinion, are the strengths of Tamarion's game, and where do you kind of see him fitting in college at Tennessee?
Tamarion's just a football player. He's one of those guys that the reason teams were kind of slow on him was his size. The issue is what is he? Is he an outside linebacker? Is he a safety? Is he a nickel corner? Nobody knows what he is. And I think when he was watching him, Jeremy Pruitt probably came to the same conclusion that I came to, especially watching him against White Station, and that is, you don't necessarily have to have a position for this kid. You just put him on the field and let him go get people. He played primarily at outside linebacker and strong safety in their game against White Station. He did line up at corner a couple times. He lined up at free safety. He lined up at defensive end. They move him all over the field, and I think that he's a guy, when he arrives at Tennessee, that Jeremy Pruitt is going to have a chess piece with. If you're playing a Georgia, a Kentucky, a Vanderbilt, that wants to come out and really run the ball a lot. They're a run-first team. They're going to grind you down. I think you're going to see Tamarion McDonald playing strong safety in our base defense, stepping up and being an in-the-box safety, because at 220, 225, he still has that linebacker mentality. He's been playing with Eason and McDonald, or excuse me, he's been playing with Eason and French for so long. He's used to being the smaller guy, but he's used to hitting these guys too. And now, Tamarion's the hitter of the three. All three of them will hit you and hurt you. Tamarion is the dude that will wreck somebody. He has the knack for delivering that crushing blow. Part of that's from being in the secondary and getting to be a safety. But he does not shy away from contact at all. He will go after a lineman. He will fight off a block. He will set an edge for you. Whatever you're asking of him, he's willing to do it, and he's smart enough to play a lot of positions. again, against a run-heavy team, I think he's probably a strong safety in the base defense, and he's going to walk up and give you an extra linebacker. If you're talking about a team like a Missouri that really likes to spread it out and throw it all over the field, I think Tamarion is a guy that you could see play some nickel corner and be that additional guy in close to the formation that, yeah, he can cover that receiver or he can step up and support the run. I think his speed is good enough to be a strong safety even against a passing team in the SEC. He'll have to develop his coverage a little bit to be a safety, but I think he can do it. I think he can play as a big safety and a kind of an old school thumper, make you pay for it over the middle strong safety. He's not going to be as fast as a lot of the safeties that Tennessee has right now, but Tamarion sort of subscribes to the theory of there's two ways you can stop a pass. You can knock the ball away from the receiver, or you can knock the receiver away from the ball, and he's really good at the second one. Just the fact that Pruitt's going to have so many places he can put him, so many places he can move him, that's really an asset with him. He's so versatile, and I think what many people saw is his biggest weakness, Jeremy Pruitt has realized, is a huge strength. And he's going to be an asset for this team. He'll help right away.
When I spoke with Tamarion, I'm trying to think when this was, when the article was. It was back after he got his offer, so back in kind of late September. So he's only held Tennessee offer for not even a month, and then he and his teammates have committed. But when I was asking him about what Tennessee's telling him on what position he wants to play, I wrote here though that he's listed as a linebacker by most recruiting services. McDonald sees himself more as a nickelback in college. That's the position the Vols and a lot of different teams are selling him. His quote to me was, "I want to play nickel because you get a little bit of action in the passing game and you'll be able to challenge in the run game. So I like to play nickel, but I'll play anything that gets me on the field." It's just like you said, Brandon. I mean, he as you mentioned in that game, he played 4 or 5 different positions in that one game. I think this is a big boost to Tennessee's recruiting class, and they need it. I mean, this was Tennessee's first commitments since Mordecai McDaniel back in August. I mean, it had been
right at 2 months.
Yeah, it'd been right at 2 months since Tennessee had picked up a commitment in football. I mean, we all kind of thought there'd be different players maybe to break that streak between now and then, and yesterday was actually Tyler Barron's birthday. He for a long time was kind of planning on making a commitment announcement on his birthday. He didn't, and then the Whitehaven kids stole his thunder, or stole his birthday thunder. So I think it's good for Tennessee to get some big recruiting momentum this way, and Tennessee's got a pair of big time in-state targets coming this weekend, and one of them is Jay Hardy, and another one, Brandon, I'll let you talk about him. Another one's another kid from the West Tennessee, Memphis area, and Amari Thomas. I mean, Tennessee under Pruitt, I mentioned this in a tweet either last night or this morning. They are under Pruitt. They've really started to target the Memphis area and actually, make it a priority again in recruiting, or just kind of West Tennessee in general. You saw in the 2018 class, Tennessee signed a couple kids out of Cordova, obviously with Jeremy Banks and Jerome Carbon. They nabbed someone else over there, I believe, in the West Tennessee area, and I'm forgetting who it was, but they did those two. In 2019, you had Eric Gray. Greg Emerson. He was another kid from West Tennessee. That's what I'm thinking of in the 2018 class. In 2019, you had Eric Gray, and you also had my mind just slipped. Melvin McBride. Obviously, he didn't end up staying with Tennessee as a player, but because he had to medically retire. But those are two kids from the West Tennessee, Memphis area that Tennessee signed in that class. Then now you've got the Whitehaven trio, and you're still targeting, like I said, Amari Thomas, Marcus Henderson, and Chris Morris, even though he committed to Texas A&M and he's technically not over Memphis anymore, or at least for school. I'm still throwing him in there. I'm still counting him as an in-state kid. But to round back around to Amari Thomas, he's coming in on a visit this weekend. Brandon, how big of a visit is this for Thomas in Tennessee? And you've also seen Amari Thomas play a little bit. We've talked about him here on the podcast. Just give me your thoughts on him overall, as kind of where you see him maybe fitting in college as an offensive lineman, defensive lineman. But start off with kind of how important this visit is for him and for Tennessee this weekend.
I think this is a huge visit for Tennessee. Amari was there when all three of the Whitehaven guys were on officials. He was not an official. He took an unofficial that week. He's going to be on an official visit this week. I'm told that I was told all of the Memphis guys were really sold and impressed with what they saw with Tennessee against Georgia. Amari is taking an official visit this week. Now, originally he has set his commitment date. He was going to announce at the I think it's the Army All-American game. They've changed the name so many times, I never know what it is. So I still call it the Army All-American game. He was originally going to announce his commitment there. I've been told by some people close to him that if this visit goes well, he might go ahead and commit this weekend. Tennessee has really made a lot of ground up there. Amari understands that they've made him a big priority. He's somebody they really, really want. As far as a football player, he's incredible. Depending on how the rest of the class shakes out, he could either be starting for Tennessee next year on the defensive line or on the offensive line, and I think he'd start either place. I said in an earlier podcast, and I stand by this, I think Amari could be all SEC as a defensive lineman. I think that's maybe higher than that, maybe even All-American could be his potential. He's that good of an athlete as a defensive lineman, and I think if they put him on defense, it's a mistake. He is the most devastating offensive lineman I've ever seen. He doesn't just block people. It looks like a ball hitting pins. And he's doing this against top flight competition. It's just those breathtaking lineman plays that you see every now and then in highlight films where you watch a lineman throw some guy 8 yards away or drive a guy 20 yards downfield before he pancakes him, or just shoulder check a linebacker and flatten him without slowing down. And most guys get 1-2 of those in their high school career. Amari makes 2 or 3 of those a game, and plays defense the whole game too, and plays end in their. And Briarcrest runs a 3-4 defense, which is one of the other reasons I'm sure Pruitt's so excited about him, because he's already accustomed to playing the role Tennessee would put him in. But plays in the whole game too. He's a phenomenal, unbelievable athlete. He's an outstanding defensive player, and I can't say enough good about him there. But on offense, it's stunning. It's just absolutely stunning to watch him work and to watch him play. If this is a guy that Tennessee can get in the boat, it's huge. And we've talked early on about this, that I'm so thrilled that Tennessee is recruiting Memphis again. I've been thrilled that Jeremy Pruitt has made Memphis a target. Tennessee had ignored it and had not gone out there in a long time. And I've learned in my trips out there, and I'm going out there again, not this Friday, but next Friday, the people in Memphis are excited to see Tennessee recruiting again. I had people coming up to me on the sidelines at games where I'm watching these Memphis kids, and when I was in Memphis, telling me they're so excited Tennessee's recruiting out here again. They're excited Tennessee is seeing this as part of the state again and is trying to pull guys in from here. There's a lot of buzz about that in the city. It's a big deal to have Tennessee recruiting the elite talent in Memphis again. It's a big deal for the city. I heard a lot of things that really surprised me when I was there in that regard that I didn't expect. It was completely unsolicited. People just coming up and telling me that. And so I think it's – and you're watching the caliber of guys that Tennessee has been able to pull. In Pruitt's first year, you got a pair of teammates, and Banks was a very productive high school player, but nobody was really sure just where he was on the scale. Carvin was a highly regarded offensive lineman. The next year, you go get the number 1 all-purpose back in the state in Eric Gray, and you pull Melvin McBride, who I think probably would have played for Tennessee this year had it not been for the heart issue. He needed some polish, but he was just an incredibly gifted athlete at that position. This year, you've got the 3 guys from Whitehaven. I think there's a really good chance of Tennessee closing the deal with Amari Thomas. It's going to be a tooth-and-nail fight with Ole Miss over him, and his teammate Jabari Small is running back at Briarcrest, hard commit to Ole Miss. They're good friends. So that's been going back and forth. Tennessee's also been recruiting another guy out at Briarcrest, though. It's a guy we actually talked about early on this season. I mentioned a guard, Rodney Newsom.
Yeah.
That I said, he's had a chance to come out and looks like a different kid on his senior film versus his junior film. Rodney's coming with Amari this week. He's on an unofficial visit this week, and he has an official visit scheduled as well in December with Tennessee. Now, I'm not sure he's a take right now. I think he's one of the steals of the class in the country. I think he is hugely underrated because of the progress that he has made and the way he's changed his body and the way he's changed his game. I think he'd be a take for Tennessee, and I think he'd be an asset on this offensive line. He's also a close friend of Amari, so that may counteract some of that. Rodney's not been offered yet, but he told me Tennessee's been on him hard, so that may be one more to watch. So it's exciting to see Tennessee recruiting Memphis again. I'll be interested to watch the Whitehaven guys. Darren Turner is a name to keep an eye on. Turner's a 4-star, currently a wide receiver at Memphis Central. He's committed to Arkansas, but Arkansas is kind of watching their class disintegrate before their eyes right now. And I'm not saying that to make fun of them. I'm not.
Right,
but they're sort of just watching their class fall apart right now. They lost Tykeus Crawford, who was who was their highest rated recruit. They have lost French. They felt like they had a good shot at getting Eason. Now he's gone. They tried to push for Tamarion late. He's gone, so they missed out on all the Whitehaven guys. There are rumors of some bad blood between Arkansas and these Whitehaven kids after their official visit. Yep. I think it was one of the things that helped the Whitehaven guys make their decision to go to Tennessee a lot easier and probably expedited that. The thing about these Memphis guys is they're tight. All the elite talent out there knows each other. They're all pretty close, and if you cross one, you probably cross them all. I'm real, and I know Tennessee is interested in Turner. Again, he's a 4-star receiver. I think Tennessee sees him more as a tight end. I know they've been kicking the tires. There's been some talks that I've heard they're trying to flip him. I'll be interested to see if the Whitehaven guys press on him, but that might be one more target out there to keep an eye on.
See, that's interesting because I want to transition here as the last part of the podcast to talk about kind of Tennessee's receiver and tight end targets, specifically because of Eric Gilbert. But you mentioned Darren Turner. I just have a hard time believing Tennessee is really going to get a whole lot more traction with Darnell Washington as a tight end. And we talked about here before on the podcast of, where does Tennessee turn if they miss on Gilbert, if they miss on Washington? And I think Turner is an interesting choice there. We'd also talked about, I'm trying to remember who we talked about. There was a kid who's listed as a defender who we thought could play linebacker, or excuse me, that could play tight end. I'm trying to remember who that name was now. But there's Tennessee's got a couple options at tight end. I've even seen people throw around the possibility of, hey, could Reggie Grimes play tight end because he's just such a versatile athlete?
I think he could.
Yeah, I think he could too. It just depends on how good of a catcher. I think he could do the blocking, at least run blocking, pretty well. I just would be curious to see what kind of pass catcher he's like.
I would not want to have to cover him.
No, not either.
That is an explosive athlete. He's got pretty good hands. He's not played a ton of running back this year, but when he has, they have thrown to him a little bit, and he's got good hands. That would be a terrifying prospect to have to try to cover him in space as a linebacker.
Yeah, that'd be interesting to, like I said, it'd be interesting to see what Tennessee does at tight end because they haven't got one in this class. They would like to get one. They kind of went, I wouldn't say they went home run or bust with, I guess Gilbert was being recruited as a receiver, but with Gilbert and Washington as tight ends, it wasn't. I don't think it necessarily was. If they don't get those two, then they're screwed. They've gotten some backup options. Just some of the backup options have also committed elsewhere at this point too. But speaking of Gilbert, Brandon, as we're recording this, it's just a few hours removed from Gilbert announcing his commitment. And when we originally were going to try to record a podcast, it was before he made his commitment announcement. And it was when he made his top 5, and Tennessee wasn't on the top 5. It was a lot of highly thought of teams. You had Georgia, Alabama, Clemson, LSU, and now I think Texas A&M was the 5th one. He had a ton of crystal balls rolling in for Alabama for his commitment, and then his time to make a commitment came, and Eric Gilbert chose LSU. You and I were talking about before we hit record here that if he was going to choose any one of the kind of the top 3 teams where it looked like he could go, LSU from a recruiting standpoint and from an affecting Tennessee standpoint, that's probably the best one he could have chose, because obviously going to Alabama, he's going to play Tennessee every year. Going to Georgia, he's going to play Tennessee every year. I think even Clemson, I think they weren't number 3 on his list probably, but even still, that would have affected Tennessee because it would have been another Clemson target or another top Tennessee target that chose Clemson over the Vols. That just has happened a lot over the last 3, 4, 5 years at this point. But Brandon, for one, I guess talk about maybe how much you were surprised about Gilbert coming to LSU, but also what happened with Tennessee and Gilbert? Because I know y'all, obviously, you and Matt, I think mostly maybe Matt's talking with the Marietta kids, but I know you've obviously had some say with it too over of our recruiting reports. But what happened with Tennessee and Gilbert? Because it seemed like for a while, I never really thought Tennessee was. I never thought they were in the driver's seat per se. I thought at different points in time that they could work themselves into that driver's seat. That I thought they had a very good chance of getting them. And then I think part of it, I know kind of the obvious thing was that Tennessee's season just kind of tanked at the beginning of the year, and I think that kind of hurt their chances. But what else happened? Because it seemed like with having his quarterback Harrison Bailey committed, with having Ramel Keaton, his former teammate, already here on campus, with having B.J. Ojolari, another one of his teammates, committed to Tennessee. It seemed like there were enough inroads there for at least Tennessee to be in the top 5, but they weren't even in the top 5. So how kind of surprised were you that he committed to LSU over Alabama? And then what did happen with him in Tennessee, and why were the Vols not even on that top 5 list?
I was stunned when he picked LSU. I had been upset all day because, and we've talked about this on the podcast before, there's no team that I have more disdain for than the University of Alabama. And
yep.
I had said to Matt earlier in the day, I said, we had to lose the way we lost to them in a game that I truly, in the bottom of my heart, believe we should have won.
They absolutely could have, or maybe, like you said, should have won that game. That one to me was, I was stunned that it was as close as it was.
I left going, we're going to have to lose to them in the way we lost to them, with the officiating and the injuries and the idiotic play by our quarterback, and lose to them again in a game that we should have won. And then I'm going to have to turn around and watch who I think is the best player in the country, and a guy that I think for about 2 months, I do think Tennessee was in the driver's seat. 2 months to 6 weeks, really culminating when BJ committed to Tennessee. Tennessee was in the driver's seat for Eric. I really believe that. I think Tennessee could have landed Eric Gilbert. I think if he had to sign right then, he'd have been a Vol. I believe that in the bottom of my heart. Now, that was just from what I've read, from what I've known, from conversations Matt and I have had and conversations he's had with him. I think there was a point Tennessee was probably a front runner for him, if not the front runner. And I'm going to have to watch this guy not only not come to Tennessee, but go to Alabama on top of the rest of it in the same week. And if it hadn't been for getting the Whitehaven guys, I would have just been in a foul mood all day. But we landed 3 of the guys that I've believed in and been so excited about to hope for all season. And then landing Springer on top of that was the icing on the cake. But I had already made peace with the fact that he was going to Alabama. And so when he announced LSU and Matt, of course, Matt was down there, he was able to stream that decision live, and he was able to be at that announcement at the College Football Hall of Fame in Atlanta. He and Dale both went down. Mm-hmm. For Eric to pick LSU, for Tennessee, that's the best place he could have gone besides Knoxville. You're going to see him in 2022 when Tennessee plays LSU again, so you'll see him when he's a junior. But the way Pruitt is recruiting right now, if he can get things turned around, you're talking about a defense that's going to be in a much better place than the one we're seeing now. You don't have to see him every year. He doesn't go to an arch rival. He doesn't go to a place like Georgia. Georgia would have probably been the worst case scenario for Tennessee because he and B.J. Ojolari are very close.
Yeah.
Azeez Ojolari, plays at Georgia. Georgia's trying to flip B.J. You could have lost Eric and lost B.J. on that one. If he goes to Alabama, you're going to have to see him every year. You're going to have to deal with him. So for him to be at LSU, Tennessee's only guaranteed to have to see him one time. And so that was exciting, and it was someone that Georgia and Alabama both badly wanted that they're not going to get. As far as what I think happened, it was Tennessee face planting the first part of the season.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
I mean, there's not anything else for it. It was just some recruits understand you're in a rebuild. There are some that know what they're getting into and they're willing to wait, willing to work through it. There are some guys, especially the really, really elite talent guys, that are looking at this going, look, I may come in and be part of a rebuild, but I need to see something from you. I need to see that you've got something going for you. And in the first 4 games, Tennessee couldn't have been much worse.
Yeah.
Especially the first 2. You face plant against Georgia State, which hurt, and then you lost the BYU game in the way that you lost it, and then go down and just look hapless on offense against Florida and get your defense gassed and worn out. It was as bad a start to a season as I ever remember Tennessee having. And it hurt Tennessee with some recruits. I think it hurt Tennessee with Rakeem Jarrett as well, but I think it really hurt Tennessee with Gilbert. And the flip side of that is LSU is off to the best start they've had in 6-7 years.
Yeah.
They look fantastic. They're throwing the ball all over the field and having a dynamic passing offense now. From an X's and O's standpoint, though, Tennessee wanted Gilbert as a receiver. I think he would have come here and been an outstanding wide receiver. Georgia and Alabama have both talked about receiver. They both want him as a tight end. And I think one of the things that probably hurt those 2 schools is Georgia and Alabama, and Tennessee's guilty of this too, and I feel terrible for Dominic Wood-Anderson, don't use their tight ends nearly enough.
Yeah.
All 3 of those schools have historically mismanaged tight end talent terribly. And when Eric goes to LSU, he's going to be the guy down there. So I think that had a lot to do with it as well. But Tennessee's start is what hurt them so badly.
Okay, I figured that's what it was. I didn't think there was anything more to it than that, probably. But I was curious if there was anything else that you all might have heard or gathered or anything like that, because I know you all have obviously been very much in contact with the Marietta kids throughout the whole recruiting process. But right now, I think that might be where we end up having to end this episode. We're already kind of pushing the 50-minute mark. We could talk about, there's a lot more we could talk about, but we have plenty of stuff we can talk about for the next podcast. I don't think we'll have one come out any later this week, but we will try to do at least one next week, if not 2. We'll ask for kind of a mailbag question or mailbag episode for you guys too, because unless Tennessee gets another commitment over the weekend, we'll of course talk about that too. But we'll have plenty to discuss as recruits are taking visits, guys are making announcements and stuff now. Tennessee's board is kind of, it's narrowing, but it's also expanding a little bit because you're having coaches, getting to see, some senior film of some guys, and Tennessee has been sending out more offers. Tennessee just sent out an offer. Actually, we were talking in the group chat about it earlier this week. They just sent out an offer to a 4-star linebacker down in Georgia. And it seems like a kind of a late offer, so I'm very intrigued as to kind of why now Tennessee, pulled the trigger on that offer. I tried to contact the kid to talk to him, but he hasn't gotten back to me. So we'll see if he ever does kind of get back to me, and if I can kind of find out from him what his conversations and stuff have been like with Tennessee. But we have, there's plenty of stuff, Brandon, we could talk about in recruiting, but we only have a very limited amount of time.
I think we at least got to say something about landing a 5-star basketball recruit.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I mentioned it earlier in the podcast, but it to me, Brandon, like I said, I wrote about it, and the article should be published on Thursday morning. So whenever you're listening to this podcast, be sure if it's after Wednesday night, be sure to check out RocketTopInsider.com to see if the article's up. But this recruiting class in general, Jaden Springer is a phenomenal player. From a pure scoring perspective, he and Keon are going to be able to put up just some points. But I think even Springer is more versatile than Keon, because Keon's still kind of working on his 3-point shot and kind of improving his jumper a little bit as it is. Springer can score from all 3 levels of the court. He can catch and shoot. He can create his own shot. He's quick, but he's not Jordan Bone type fast, but he's quick enough on his feet to where he can create separation with his footwork. He has very good footwork. Defensively, Springer, to me, I mean, all the guys that Barnes and his staff bring in, they're going to be they're going to look at them as their defense and see what they can do defensively. Keon Johnson's is by far the best one in this group, and he might be by far the best defender on Tennessee's team as soon as he sets foot on the court day one as a true freshman. Jaden Springer's no slouch on the defensive end. He plays with really good physicality on offense, and he carries it over to his defense. And I'm just a big fan of Springer's game. I think Keon's probably my favorite just because well, for one, he's an in-state kid, and those obviously, you're a little more attached to him as a recruit, or as a media member, as a fan, or whatever. But Springer, to me, both these guys are legit 5 stars. I don't think the recruiting services are kind of hyping him up or putting too much into him. Brandon, I do legitimately think that Springer is a 5-star who, it seems like from everything he said and from the interviews and stuff he's given, his goal, and as it should be, his goal is to come in, play 1 season, go to the NBA. And I think that he very much can do that as long as he stays healthy, because he does have a little bit of a minor injury he's been nursing and just trying to, make sure it doesn't grow anything more. I don't think that'll be an issue. I don't think he's going to be kind of an injury-prone guy or anything like that, but barring any sort of injuries or anything that could happen to him between now and this time next year, I think he could end up being easily a one-and-done type of kid for Tennessee.
Springer's just explosive on the offensive end. And you're talking about Keon. Keon can absolutely score on offense. Keon's an elite defender. Keon might be the best on-ball defender in this class. He is put him on the other team's best player and watch him take him away kind of defender. And Keon can score. Springer is a good defender, but he's an elite scorer. And so you've kind of got both sides of the spectrum there. Both guys are able to do everything, but Keon's going to be your anchor on defense. I think Springer's going to be your anchor on offense and the guy that it runs through. One of the interesting things is going to be to watch Josiah James this season, because could he be a one and done? Absolutely. There's also been talk with him from the beginning that he'd like to stick around a little longer.
Yep.
That was sort of his thought. If you can imagine a Corey Walker, Keon Johnson, Josiah James, and now Jaden Springer on the same team, that is unreal. And Uros Plavich probably still sticking around in the middle. Mm-hmm. That's frightening.
It to me, the 2020/2021 roster, like you said, if James stays for next season, I mean, obviously you're gonna lose Lamonte Turner or Jordan Bowden, but you mentioned Uros Plavich, you're gonna have Victor Bailey Jr. from the Oregon transfer coming off the bench, and he's gonna be getting eligibility as another guard. You're gonna be a very guard-heavy team, just like you are kind of this year too. But I also think that's kind of the direction basketball is going. It has I wouldn't say going at that, it's been in for a while at this point. But you don't just have guards. You don't just have 6'2", 6'3" guards. You have guys like Josiah Triple J, who's 6'6". Keon Johnson and Jaden Springer both are 6'5", 6'6" themselves. Corey Walker is 6'7". You have these kind of what I like to call spindly athletes who have really long arms, who are, because of how athletic and how really well they can jump and kind of the builds they have, they're a lot better rebounders than you would expect. So you don't necessarily need a bunch of 6'8", 6'9", 6'10" guys out there to rebound like Tennessee. Not that they had a bunch of that this past year, but you had guys with more girth and stuff like Grant Williams and Admiral Schofield and Kyle Alexander out there. You're still going to have like a guy like Uros Plavich and John Fulkerson, who are going to be post players for you. Or maybe also if they can go pick up a commitment from, say Dylan Cardwell in this 2020 class as well, who would be another kind of center post player for you. But it's not like I said, you're not like you just have a bunch of small guards out there. You have guys who are versatile, who, like we've mentioned, are very good on the offensive end, but guys who are quick enough, long enough, and athletic enough to go grab missed shots on the offensive end, or alter shots on the defensive end, or pick up missed shots on the defensive end that doesn't look like they should be able to go get. So it's going to be a team that's going to look different, obviously, than what the last couple years have looked like for Tennessee this season and moving forward. But Brandon, I am thoroughly excited to cover Tennessee's men's basketball team, and also to Lady Vols too, but for Tennessee's men's basketball team, obviously this season, but really, I mean, next season. I don't want to I don't want to just push away this upcoming season, because I do think Tennessee could surprise some people and have a pretty decent season. But that 2020-2021 season, I am very excited to watch them and cover them, because that could be, it's going to be hyped up as a potential Final Four team, and I I don't think fans are crazy for thinking that. That might change depending on if like I said, Josiah James leaves, there's injuries or something happen. But as long as things kind of keep the way they're going, I would not kind of tell people to pump their brakes if they're going to expect Tennessee to maybe make their first Final Four in school history.
I think they could surprise people this year.
Yeah, I do too.
The Robinson kid that was in this class. Say his last name for me because I never get it right. I don't like to say a name wrong on air.
I believe it is Camwa. Is how you say his last name.
When you look at him, I see a slightly less thick, but very similar to a young Grant Williams.
Yep, me too.
That's what he reminds me of. That's what I think of him on tape. And when you're able to, if Tennessee gets Uros Plavich eligibility this year, and I think they have a good shot at doing that, if he gets eligibility this year and you can bring Robinson off the bench, rotate with Folke if you need to have some size. Maybe he's a little undersized. He's an explosive athlete. Now, he was a 4-star in his own right. Explosive athlete, good scorer, help you with rebounds, and you've got a guard-heavy team this year that plays really, really good defense with Lamonte and Jordan Bowden on the back end that can also fill it up scoring. They're not going to be as deep as they were last year, but this is still a really, really good team.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and plug this because hopefully eventually this week and next week before the season begins, I'll finish up the series I did where I interviewed high school coaches of Tennessee's 2019 recruits, which I was supposed to do all that over the summer and finish it up, and only ended up doing Devontae Gaines and Drew Pemmer before other stuff. I think some breaking news and stuff happened, and a bunch of other stuff happened, and I just never got a chance to finish it. But I only got 2 of the 5 of Tennessee's new additions, of their high school coaches I talked to, because I also talked to Uros Plavic's high school coach over in Chattanooga, or down in Hamilton Heights. But I'll go ahead and tease this a little bit. The guy, the head coach, and I'm forgetting his name, but the head coach of the high school that, or I guess his name's Oren. He's dropped Robinson, but of where Olivier Camwa played in high school, he said he didn't really tell him this a whole lot because he didn't want to give him a big head. He's like, and obviously, I don't like comparing players to other players because it puts an unfair expectation on them. He's like, but if I had to kind of compare Camwa Olivier to a kind of a player who's playing right now, he said I would compare him to obviously still a pretty raw, but a guy with an upside and kind of a skill set of Giannis, the Greek freak in the NBA. So that's just a little bit of teaser for that whole interview that I had. But he compared him to, like I said, a young, definitely still raw, but a version of the Greek freak in the NBA. So he's to me, this staff seems very, very, very excited about Camwa, and I'd be very curious to see what kind of role he plays as a true freshman this year.
Well, we have the Greek freak, but Tennessee's also got the flying Frenchman. I'm really interested to see what happens with Yves Pons.
Yeah,
this is a guy that I've been waiting on to. He's been good, but I'm waiting on that switch to flip because when you watch him play, his ceiling is so unbelievably high that when that switch finally flips, and I don't think it's for lack of trying on Pond's part. I don't think it's a lack of work ethic. It's nothing like that. Mm-hmm. He's just not hit that point yet. When he does, he's going to be great. Not good, great. He's already an exceptional defender. He's probably the best athlete on the team. If he can develop a mid-range or a three-point shot at all, with the way he plays defense, with his size, with his length, and the way he's able to run, I think this season with so many guards, Tennessee's going to rely more on fast break points than they have in the past. I think they're going to run more. Yeah. I believe they're going to have to, and he's a nightmare coming down the floor if you have to defend him, because who do you put on him when he's running? Who do you have take him if they decide to run? And he can jump from anywhere on the floor and get a dunk.
Yep.
I mean, there's no anything beyond the half court line. The kid could jump and dunk it. He's an unbelievable athlete, and I'm waiting to see him click, because when he does, he's going to be a superstar. And with what Tennessee's going to ask him to do this year, he's going to have a bigger role on defense. I think he's going to have more minutes this year because they need his size and rebounding as well.
Right. Yeah. They're probably going to try to play him as a smaller four. I mean, it would obviously depend on if Project gets eligible and just kind of what the makeup of the team ends up being. But with does Zach Kent get a lot of minutes? Fulkerson's obviously going to play a lot, but there's already been talk from even before Barnes said it. But Barnes has also mentioned that they're wanting to play Pons at the 4 a little bit, kind of in a smaller ball lineup, like you said, because they need his defense and they need his length on defense on the court. And offensively, I think they might want to take him a little bit from trying to make him kind of that 3-point jumper guy to, as you're mentioning, just kind of throw him in the paint and see what he can do, because he's got the tools to do that, I think.
Completely agree. I'm so excited for basketball season, and it's still strange for me as a Tennessee fan to say that. Mm-hmm. and to be this pumped for basketball season, but I'm so excited for basketball season. I can't wait to see this team. I think I'm going to get to cover the opener this year. Nice. And so I'm really excited to be back in Thompson Bowling. I'm really excited to be there when the season tips off. And I saw a poll The Athletic did, I think, last week, where according to The Athletic and the people that they had questioned and they had asked, Thompson Bowling was named the most difficult place to play in the SEC, above Rupp Arena. Yep, so these Tennessee fans got a winner, and they've got a good product, and they made it a very hostile home environment, and I'm excited to be there when it's that again.
And they've already sold out, I think, 5 or 6 home games this season for Tennessee already. I mean, and they've already got the Wisconsin games almost sold out too. I mean, this fan base, the basketball team has showed in the last couple of years that if you win, they will absolutely support you. So if Tennessee football could ever get back to winning again, I mean, we saw it in 2016. I mean, that Neyland Stadium was in 2015 too, in the Oklahoma game. I mean, the stadium was loud in 2015, 2016. I won't forget those games of Oklahoma and Florida and those home games, in Georgia too, in 2015. But this basketball, I mean, like you said, Brandon, it's a little weird for a lot of people in Tennessee to say, or at least in Knoxville, they're Vols fans, not Memphis fans or Vanderbilt fans, to say, hey, I'm super excited for basketball season more so than football. But this fan base has shown that if you go out there and give them an actual reason to pay money to go to games, they will do it. And it also helps that Vol fans have just been starving for
a winner,
maybe just winner, but also just competence to an extent too, because a lot of the sports have just been not just not winning, but they just looked incompetent out on the court, field, baseball diamond, whatever you want to say it. And that's why also the baseball team's success was eaten up so kind of ravenously over and back in the spring, because they hadn't done anything in a long time, and they had a surprisingly good season too. But Brandon, I'm with you. I'm excited for basketball, but I do think we need to go ahead and end this podcast, because we have gone over, I think, an hour now. But I want you to, before we end it here at the RTI and VR2 Recruiting Podcast, I do want you to plug some stuff you all have going at Vol Recruiting Reports, because you all have a lot of good stuff you've done with interviews. I was hoping we could do a podcast last week, because you all had a lot of good content last week from a bunch of different recruits. You all got to interview and stuff. Obviously, some of those are still relevant. People can go back and read them. But I want you all, I know, have an interview with Harrison Bailey up on the site now too. So I want you to kind of plug stuff that you guys have going before we get off here.
Yeah, feel free to come give us a look at volrecruitingreports.org. You can follow us on Twitter at _VR2_. Find us on Instagram at VR2. Find us on Facebook at VR2. You'll find links to what we're doing. We do have some premium content. You'll get early access to a few things. There, it's only $2 a month. I promise you, it's the best value in recruiting. It's probably the best value in any kind of premium Tennessee coverage you're going to find. We go all over the place getting this. I think up on our site in the past week, we have video interviews with Octavius Oxendine. We put up video interviews with all three of the Whitehaven guys from Memphis. We have been able to interview Marcus Henderson in the past week. Matt is down in Atlanta today. He has an interview with Harrison Bailey that he got today. Harrison's been a really, really difficult interview to get. There's not going to be many more of those until he decides to sign. You've had access to that. We have more on tap this week. Go over, check it out, give us a follow. You're going to see the amount of content that we put out. You're going to see the amount of places that we go. We have audio, we have written content, we have guys for 2020, we have guys for 2021, we have a couple of 2022 guys that we've talked to and put articles up on this week. If you see us out of the game, say hey. We are all over the place this week. I'm going to be in Virginia this week. I think Dale is going to be at the I think it's the Ottawa and, I think he's going to be at the Oak Ridge and Bradley Central game. I don't think Matt has nailed down where he's going yet. And so we're all over the place. We cover the state. If you see us at a game, say hey. We usually post where we're headed to. Love to hear from you. Give us a follow. We really do our best to give the best content that we possibly can to the people who are wanting to know what's going on with Tennessee sports.
Yeah, you guys do fantastic work. I've had a couple people tell me that they've run into you guys and have talked with you, and they mentioned, hey, don't you do a podcast with them? I was like, yeah, we teamed up with them a little while ago to do the RTI and VR2 Recruiting Podcast, and I'm not just saying that to plug it. I mean, I legitimately have had a couple people tell me, hey, run into Matt or Brandon, or you all have a couple other different people who do stuff with you. So like you said, Dale and all these other guys. So I have legitimately had people tell me that they run into you guys. So y'all do great work. That's why I wanted to partner with you guys, way back when we did, because I think you guys are good people, and I appreciate your work, and I definitely recommend everybody go out and check them out and follow them on their social media sites. As I said earlier, we're RockyTopInsider.com. I'll have some stuff, already a lot of stuff on there about the Whitehaven trio committing to Tennessee, our impact report on all of them, and impact report on Jaden Springer. Going to have more stuff on Tennessee's recruiting efforts in basketball. Like I said, the article I might have about Rick Barnes kind of pulling in the best class in Tennessee history on paper, at least. And I'm hoping to have a special interview with someone who is very intimate with Jaden Springer as far as how he is as a player. So be on the lookout for that as well. And I'm hoping, as I mentioned earlier, to also be able to interview McDonald, one of the Whitehaven kids, and talk with him about why he chose to commit to Tennessee and all this different stuff too with his recruitment. So be on the lookout for all that stuff from RockyTopInsider.com. We have practice coverage and football as well. We'll have the latest on Brian Maurer's health, on who's going to start quarterback for Tennessee, all this stuff going on for that, and getting ready for basketball season, because exhibition game is exactly a week away from now, and then the season starts on November 5th. But thank you all again so much for tuning in to another episode of the RTI and VR2 Recruiting Podcast. We'll be back again next week. That's a promise this time. We're not going to give a week or two off. We'll be back again next week with another episode. Thank you all.